Greetings. Um, my name is Jammie Phillips, and I am here from uh, music, the NAFME, or one of the NAFME cohorts. Um, and I'll be going over my action research on this video. So let me share my screen. And I have so many of them. I'm hoping that I'm pulling the right one up here. I think I'm sharing it. All right. If not, I got to go back and do this whole thing again. All right, so this is my teacher leader action research plan 24-25. Like I say, I'm Jammie Phillips. Music is the discipline, and I teach band 6 through 8. Okay. All right, so for September, I went too fast. For September, the first slide here, we got the Who Are You slide. And then I'm supposed to share some of the reflections from the questions on pages 101 through 104 in Unearth and Joy. In terms of who I am, in the identity column, I have who I am, which is a African American woman. I discovered my identity when I was in kindergarten, and I noticed I didn't look like the people on TV. All right. So for the skills portion, I talked about that I chose to teach the subject because music was the only thing that I was good at. My skills show up in the pedagogy through modeling and demonstrations. Intellect means intelligence to me. The skills is what you know how to do with hands-on. And intellect is having the knowledge to do it. So not necessarily the hands-on. In terms of the criticality portion, I talk about how some people are against criticality teaching because they're afraid of their skeletons coming out, which is true. And I feel it's better to bury them than discuss them out in the open. All right. So then we look at joy here. And in the joy column, I talk about what gives me joy in this profession is seeing students learn and listen to what I have to say in terms of this profession. When they continue with band in high school and college, it gives me great joy. And that means that they listen as well as it gives joy to them as well. So in the reflections, I talk about how I'm a mentor, a safe space, a safe place for students, and sometimes the only adult in these students' lives that sees the greatness before they do. All right. So then in terms of the journey journal for September, we were reflecting on the CAN session and the connections we made and the understanding of wonderings we gained. I talked about how I felt a little vulnerable. It's like open a door that usually stays closed for me in professional settings. Talking about identity markers such as being a Black woman, a mother, educator, leader, made me reflect on much of myself that I bring into this work. In the PLC, the conversations that we had, it created space for deeper understandings and connections. We talked about how what we do is just oftentimes not seen as a role, but being seen as a whole person. When others shared, I gained insight into how their identities help shape their teaching as well. It was powerful, necessary, and overdue. The next bullet, we talk about intersectional identity in music education because music is deeply personal and culture. So when I understand my students' layered identities, such as their race, gender, culture, language, ability, then I can choose activity, music, and lessons that reflect who they are. All right. Okay, so we go back to reflect on the identity of who are your students. So my students are primarily African American. Their skills they learn best through modeling. They love when I make music with them. In terms of intellect, my students like to cultivate their knowledge of the world outside of school by attending various competitions and participating in honor bands. It gets them out the building. Then when we deal with their criticality, the students experience being Black and dealing with their peers that have chosen other paths. Some of their peers as early as sixth grade have decided to be on the streets. They made that decision. And so the students that I deal with, they struggle to stay on the right side of right. When I deal with the joy of my students, they have artistic and creative sensibilities because they know what sounds good. They enjoy making good sounds and making me happy. All right. So again, in the reflections, we're reflected. So I'm a Black woman, educator, band director, leader, mother, lifelong learner, someone that believes that music is more than just performance. It's a pathway to identity, connection, and cultural pride. All right. So then we looked at the pre-inquiry cycle and this scorecard thing that we were doing. Um, and so, in terms of it analyzing my curriculum and teaching, I didn't find that it really helped. It just seemed to be another compliance piece of paperwork that I have to say, I was not really that interested in doing it. It would be understandable, and I guess it did help a little bit to compartmentalize some things, but I did find it to be a waste of time. Describing notices that I made about the needs of our class. Um, my students are mostly in the emerging awareness category on that particular scorecard. And then jot down a quick wondering, what strategy would I try? So this was in the beginning stages of the wondering. And here I tried to incorporate women and biopic composers in our curriculum this year. I hope to move the students out of the emerging awareness category. All right, and then the journey journal for October, we talked about what was the students showing interest in and how might it shape their teaching for the year. I wrote that my students love playing concerts, displaying their talent. Um, it shaped my teaching by allowing me to continuously seek opportunities for them to perform. In terms of asset mapping and strength-based models, how they supported me, of the students, my understanding of the students in school community. Asset mapping and strength-based models, they completely shifted how I approach the students in the school community. Instead of starting with what's wrong and what's missing, I started by asking what gifts are already here. When I looked at the students through that asset-based lens, I saw creatives, problem solvers, and storytellers. Even if those strengths don't always show up in traditional ways, it did force me to look deeper and recognize the brilliance that may be overlooked out of them. Okay, so then we move on to data collection, and then here we have some pre-survey results here. Um, for the pre-survey, yeah, I did. I put them all on the same sheet, but a little bit later when we get to the post-survey, I kind of have different slides for each focus student. All right, so then we're moving into November. And then, so by November, we were supposed to identify a challenge or a dilemma. I noticed that in my classroom that the conversations about students, especially Black and Brown students, oftentimes start with what they can't do, won't do, or haven't done yet. I've heard it a lot in staff meetings and different passing comments, and sometimes how I talk to myself and think and reflect about challenges in my classroom. So the narrative kind of leaned towards behaviors, deficits, or test scores, and not their potential brilliance, creativity. In the band room, I see students light up a lot of times when they're given leadership roles or opportunity to express themselves through music. But outside of that space, they weren't always seen the same way. So I realized that there was a disconnect between what the students really are and how they are perceived in schools. So that pushed me to kind of reflect on how I could help to shift the narrative in my classroom, but across the school. So what I came up with for my wondering was dealing with them kind of having self reflections of their identity and how it kind of deals with music making as it relates to them. So then I looked at the what is the relationship between students' identity and their sense of self and their musical preferences, and kind of how I can help them to kind of get that out there so people can learn that other side of them. So, for the Journey Journal for November, we looked at giving ourselves room to reflect, break down, and verbalize what's happening in our classrooms, and what else we could create wonders about. So, I wrote that teachers can use reflection to evaluate their teaching practices, consider student feedback, and make changes to improve learner reflection can help teachers identify what works well and what needs to be adjusted. And of course, we all know that as educators. Um, I said that I could also look at wondering about slowing down and taking time to ensure that each student is correct. Because a lot of times I could be very, very fast paced in my classroom and in my methods of instruction. So I was kind of thinking, well, if I looked at something else, I could kind of look at ways to kind of slow down and take time and see how much I can affect learning like that. So then we move into December. So then here we go with the 5 pursuits again, right? So we looked at identity and how those 5 pursuits contribute to or enhance the current dilemma, challenge, or wondering. So for mine, identity helps me center who the students are. It also helped them to kind of look at who they are as persons, and not just what they can produce. It reminds me that every student comes with culture, language, values, and experiences that deserve to be affirmed. And the skills, they allow me to build academic strength while honoring different ways of knowing and expressing. It's not about lowering the expectations, it's about shifting how we define excellence in our classrooms and give those students more than one way to show that they know. And then in terms of intellect, it pushes me to go beyond surface level content. It reminds me that students are capable of deep, rigorous thought, and they may want to be challenged as long as the learning feels relevant and respectful of who they are. And then criticality, how it helps to enhance the current dilemma challenges where the real disruption kind of happens with that, I figure. It gives me and my students permission to ask the hard questions, challenge injustice, and reflect on systems that impact our lives. Um, this is also especially important in dismantling deficit-based thinking because it makes visible how those narratives are rooted in power and bias. And then in terms of joy, joy is the heartbeat. It's what makes all the other pursuits sustainable. When students feel joyful, they feel free. And in a world that often tells them they are too much or not enough, joy is resistance. So when we looked at those different those levels as it relates to the current dilemma or challenge, it gave me a powerful framework to respond to deficit thinking. I noticed in my school community, they don't just offer a checklist, they offer a mindset. Each pursuit challenges me to reimagine what teaching and learning should look like, especially for students who are often underserved or misunderstood. All right, then we looked at these. We got to this performance task piece of this work, and we were supposed to review the association performance task, reflect on a performance task. I wrote that it was good to see enduring understandings and essential questions written out regarding music because a lot of times you don't see that. It's just go teach, and you don't often see those pieces. So, reflection, how will your performance test support your inquiry or wondering? Well, by knowing what knowledge and skills the students need to master and the big ideas and important understanding students should retain. Then I sketched out what my performance test might be. And I stated that musical preference is a person's liking for one piece of music over another. It is determined by a multitude of understandings of the individual. Okay, so then we switch over to the SEL competencies and which ones will be fostered through the performance test. So the two that I decided to deal with was self-awareness. Musical preference is a person's liking for one piece over another. It is determined by a multitude of understandings of the individual. So the students with this work, the focus students will be looking at self-awareness as well as social awareness. Musical preference is a person's liking for one piece over another. It is determined by a multitude of understandings of the individual. So those are the two that they will be dealing with. My revised wondering was, what is the relationship between students' identity and sense of self and their musical preferences? Okay, so the Journey Journal for December, how does peer learning support you in your PLC? What is the value of peer-to-peer learning? How might you take these skills into your school, campus, and team? Peer learning supports by allowing individuals to learn from one another, can enhance engagement, critical thinking, and collaboration skills, while also fostering a sense of community and providing diverse perspectives to deepen understanding of a topic. Essentially, it empowers individuals to solidify their knowledge by actively teaching and explaining concepts to their peers. All right, we moved on into January where we were talking about instructional focus and designing performance tasks. What will the students know and be able to do, and how will they demonstrate their understanding? Students will understand how factors such as culture, socioeconomic status, and upbringing influence an individual's musical preferences. The success criteria for that I define the key concepts, clarify what is meant by personal background, musical taste, and influence. Within the context of the essay, I had them research cultural influences, investigating how different cultures shape their musical preference, including traditional music forms, regional genres, and cultural practices. Exploring socioeconomic factors, examining how socioeconomic status impacts access to music, exposure to different genres, and the ability to participate in music education, period. Analyzing upbringing, we looked at family background, parenting styles, and childhood experiences, and how they influence musical choices and emotional responses to music. We then gathered personal anecdotes, collecting stories and examples from individuals of diverse backgrounds to illustrate how their experience shaped their musical taste. Those assessments included surveys and writing, and we did whole lot of discussion. All right, so for our journey journal for January, we were reflecting on the can session, the connection we made, the new understandings and wonders we gave. All right, so um, we designing a unit with the five pursuits at the center allowed me to be intentional about the kind of classroom and culture that I wish to create. It helped me to move beyond simply covering content and instead focusing on cultivating deep, meaningful learning experiences for my students. My goal isn't just to teach standards, it's to teach students. And when I use the five pursuits, I was reminded that teaching is just as much about affirming identity and building critical consciousness as it is about skills and assessments. The approach kept me aligned with my purpose as a teacher leader. It helped me to model what student-centered, justice-oriented instruction looks like, not just in theory, but in daily practice. When I plan with identity, intellect, skills, criticality, and joy in mind, I'm showing other educators what it means to honor the whole child. It strengthened my ability to advocate for equitable learning environments across the school, not just in my own classroom. For my students, it was transformative. When they see themselves reflected in the curriculum, their voices, it makes them feel their voices are valued. And when they're challenged to think critically and experience joy, they show up differently. They lean in, they take ownership. They begin to believe that their stories matter and that their brilliance isn't something to be earned, it's already within them. All right. So then we moved into February and we looked at methods and strategies. So, what methods and strategies did we use to be different? What will we do differently in our curriculum to test our wondering? So, we had a recap of how personal background shapes musical taste. Then we talked about the significance of understanding the influences in appreciating diverse musical landscapes. And then I called them to explore and embrace varied musical experiences for personal enrichment. The success for my students, criteria for my students included them defining musical taste in their own words, them being aware of how their background shapes their preferences, and them being able to reflect on their personal identity through music. In terms of assessment, what tools or instruments did we use to assess student learning throughout our action plan? We were able to gather those personal anecdotes, analyze upbringing, compare different backgrounds, and all of those could be accomplished through observations and conversations. The match alignment between our proposed data and inquiry question and wondering, it aided in actually collecting the data for us. So then the action plan design, first what we did, we observed it. I had the conversations with the students. I had them as a full class before I went in. Even though I already had my focus students selected, I still did this with the whole group, with all of my groups. So we are observed that we had those conversations as a full class. Then I identified the three focus students and I observed and I was able to have the conversations with them and collect data from them. Next, I was had to take that data and aggregate it. Okay. So for the February Journey Journal, we were able to look at identity and experience, how it deeply influenced their approach to my approach to assessment and data collection, and how it shaped my values and perspective on what's happening in student learning. Um, so, other ways to assess and collect data in the classroom include that I came up with portfolios, allowing the students to showcase a range of their work over time, reflecting their growth, student led conferences, empowering them to present and discuss their learning, showing ownership of their progress, creative projects, offering students the opportunities to express knowledge through visual art, performance, or multimedia presentations. Peer and self assessment, using peer feedback or self reflection tools to engage them in the assessment process, fostering critical thinking and self awareness. Narrative assessments, having them write those personalized qualitative feedback pieces, observations, and anecdotal records, collecting data through observations of student behavior, interactions, and engagement, offering them a more nuanced view of learning beyond numbers and grades. All right, so then we pushed into March, and then this is where we kind of gathered those post-survey results. And as I stated, I did these on different sheets, so I kind of found towards it, I need to kind of get my focus students kind of more by themselves, so I can look at that data and be able to wrap up this project. So we looked at focus student 1 here, focus student 2, focus student 3. All right. And so this is some of the evidence that was visible in their student work. They did go to solo and ensemble. So what I did, I guess, to go ahead and just, instead of trying to do everything that we did within the school year, I said, I'll take solo and ensemble and I'll let this be kind of the project for them. And so basically what we always do for solo and ensemble, I let the students select their own piece that they want to perform. And so that kind of plays a part in their musical preferences, what they like, what they select, those types of things. And then I'll allow them to work those selections up, and then they go get adjudicated on those pieces. In this evidence here, I have links to their before work, and I believe it is them playing these pieces. Uh, So that's them kind of practicing on their pieces or what have you. Okay, so we're gonna go back to here to the evidence. Uh-oh, because I'm not sure if it's going to allow me to play the video. I'm not sure how that'll work, but it's in the slide deck. The different of them their before work. So it's them practicing their pieces, and then during, I didn't really have anything to put there. During, before, same thing as it relates to performance, and then over here is the after, and this is their ratings from the performance. So focus student 1 received a superior rating on her performance. Focus student 2 received an excellent rating on her performance. And focus student 3 received a superior rating on her performance. Okay, so then we got additional evidence collected here in my slides. And so what these are, I believe, yes, these are their questionnaires as it relates to their music and identity. And I just asked them a few questions, such as how they see themselves as, what do they identify strongly with, what genres do they listen to, why do you listen to music? Different things like that was a part of the questioning process for that. And so focus student 1, focus student 2, focus student 3, their survey data is uploaded in there. Okay, and then here is interviews, and I asked them the following questions. Describe a song or artist that you feel really represents who you are and why. Has your taste in music changed over time? If yes, do you think it reflects changes in your identity? And do you think music helps you express or understand your identity? Why or why not? And I'm going to try to click on one of them and see what happens. Describe a song or artist that you feel really represents who you are. SZA. And why? Why do you feel she does? Because she's calm, she's cool, she's antisocial, and she stays to herself. Okay, speaking a little bit more. Okay, has your taste in music changed over time? You feel? No. So you like the same? Okay, so that's a little bit, and that is focus student 2. Um, I believe. Okay. All right. And so they just kind of answer the questions about, how music, whoop de whoop. Okay. Pushing forward. So then we did Journey Journal for April. And what is the value of data to drive decision making? I wrote that embracing data driven decision making empowers organizations to make informed strategic choices that enhance performance. Where are there other opportunities? Collect data in your classroom, program, or school campus to drive. I put performance assessments, practice logs, student reflections, student surveys, attendance records, if we're thinking whole school. All right, then we push into May, June. We were just kind of, I wasn't sure what to do with that slide. So I wasn't sure what to do with it. But okay, so teacher reflection. So what went well in your action research? What went so-so? So everything was pretty much seamless. We went on normal, just like a normal school year. That's how I always do this. I don't never like make it a thing for the students. I just kind of do what I do. And like this year I did focus students. So they kind of knew what was going on this year versus last year where I didn't do the interviews and all of that. But it was all good. And I tracked the progress of those 3 focus students. I wish I would have done better with collecting evidence, but I did okay. All right. So then what was challenging? How did you overcome? A key challenge in my actual research was kind of balancing the student-centered inquiry with curricular requirements. I felt like sometimes it wasn't enough time to explore deeply. To overcome this, I integrated flexible projects that aligned with required standards while allowing students to pursue personal connections to the material. Um, Also, another challenge for my students was kind of encouraging them. They did it, but it took a lot of encouraging them to openly share their identities and experience. And it just required, the same thing I do all the time, creating a safe, trusting classroom environment and fostering ongoing dialogue with my students. It works every time. All right. So then what was the impact of the method strategy you used to enhance support student learning? The method I used was focusing on action research with student identity and cultural connections, and how it had a significant impact on student learning. Students begin to see how their personal experiences shape their musical preferences and creative processes. And I think, like one student kind of struggled with engagement, focus student 2. She did end up selecting a piece for a solo and ensemble and performing it. Even though she did get an excellent, but she did end up going and selecting something that she liked, and she worked it up. The deeper connection to her, it led to increased participation and a greater sense of ownership over her learning, I feel. All right. How did action research impact my students' understanding of societal, historical, and cultural concepts? Final call on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students reports to the bus lane. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students reports to the bus lane at this time. Thank you. So how did action research impact my students' understanding of the societal, historical, and cultural context of the artwork, repertoire, artists, and artistic processes? The action research that I did on the students' identities and musical preference deepened their understanding of music's societal, historical, and cultural context by making learning personally relevant to them. The fact that I was asking them about their favorite artists and different things like that, and how they influence their musical taste, it was like to them, I think they felt like, wow, somebody cares. Prompting that inquiry within them, of the origins of their musical knowledge. It kind of gave them, like somebody cares about what I think in an academic manner or my thoughts. So it helped there. How did action research help students demonstrate a better understanding of their identities, cultural background, and beliefs? Well, it encouraged them to reflect on their musical preferences, revealing deeper connections to their identities, cultures, and beliefs. Hello. The process fostered self-awareness, cultural pride, and greater appreciation of their diverse backgrounds through inquiry, discussion, and creative expression, rooted in their personal and shared cultural experiences. So, how did this action research help the students develop the understanding of their peers' art and art processes? I think it was the open dialogue, collaboration, reflection, that we had on the diverse creative processes. They gained insight into different cultural perspectives of their peers and their artistic choices. And I think amongst them, it fostered respect, empathy, and a stronger classroom community. How did the action research impact mine and my students thinking about power, anti-oppression, and equity in their community and or society? The action research prompted critical conversations about power, anti-oppression, and equity by linking their musical identities to broader social issues. It helped them to recognize how certain voices and genres are marginalized or celebrated in society, which led to deeper awareness of systematic inequities. This fostered empathy, empowered my student voices, and they encouraged their advocacy through art. How did highlighting specific SEL competencies impact their learning and sense of belonging? It helped them to better understand themselves and connect with others. It fostered supportive, inclusive environments here in this classroom where the students felt seen, heard, and valued. As a result, their engagement, confidence, and sense of belonging in the classroom significantly increased. What new insights or next steps did I discover as a result of implementing this chosen method or strategy? A key insight was the power of student voice in shaping meaningful curriculum. The next steps I would say include expanding cultural responsive practices, integrating more student-led inquiry, and continuing to explore equity through the arts in this classroom. How did the results of your action research inform your wondering? Well, the results affirm my wondering that student identity deeply influences musical preferences. It showed that when students connect personally with a piece, then learning becomes more meaningful for them. If I continue this work, I would advise my future self to trust student voice, allow for flexibility, and prioritize cultural respect, responsive practices. A new wondering that emerged is how can student-led inquiry be sustained across subjects to promote equity and deeper learning throughout the curriculum? So then, in terms of the journey journal for May, we reflected on, how I might hold myself accountable to my personalized action plan for next year. I wrote that I would set clear, measurable goals for integrating student identity, cultural responsiveness, and equity into my teaching. Regular self-reflection and student feedback would help assess progress. I also established check-ins with colleagues for support, ensuring continuous growth and adaptation. How does a personalized action plan support teachers as critical and culturally responsive educators beyond the state of education on their campus, in the district, and at the state level? It goes beyond external mandates by fostering a deeper connection to students' identities and experiences, I think. This approach helps teachers to create inclusive, equitable learning environments that prioritize student voice, critical thinking, and cultural relevance, regardless of broader educational pressures. The plan serves as a tool for ongoing reflection, professional growth, and advocacy for change at the classroom level, ensuring that teaching is meaningful and impactful on a personal and community level. All right, and then the teacher leadership slide, and I know this last slide because the last one I did. What did I learn about myself from this process as an educational leader / coach? I learned that my leadership is most powerful when it's rooted in authenticity. Through this process, I realized that I don't have to separate who I am from how I lead. I can show up fully with my lived experience, cultural identity intact, and values guiding the way. I also learned that creating space for others to reflect, be vulnerable, and grow is just as important as sharing strategies or giving feedback. Coaching isn't about having all the answers, it never has been. It's about helping others to find their own. I saw how much impact I can have by simply listening with intention, asking the right questions, and holding space for truth and transformation. This process reminded me that leadership is not about control but connection. What were successful and challenging facilitation moments, and how might I continue to grow as a reflexive facilitator? Well, successful moments for me came when I was able to create a safe space for honest dialogue with my PLC. I allowed my colleagues to share openly. I listened to them more, and I encouraged risk taking. And it helped to deepen our conversations. The challenges include managing dominant voices, yes, because we had some dominant voices in our group, and navigating the silence without rushing, reminding myself to guide rather than to control the group, you know. Um, and to grow as a reflexive facilitator, I plan to focus on reading the group dynamics better, asking open ended questions, and intentionally inviting quieter voices in. Reflecting after each session will help me to improve. I also want to increase my cultural awareness to foster empathy and connection. Growth means staying curious and learning alongside those I support. And I always reminded them that I was doing that. How can I encourage and support my peers continue growth as a coach, leader, and facilitator? To support my peers' growth as coaches, leaders, and facilitators, I prioritize building trust and authentic relationships first. I want to listen to, understand their strengths, challenges, and goals, and tailor my support to meet them where they are. I encourage reflection by asking thoughtful questions instead of giving quick answers, helping them discover their own solutions. I also share resources, model inclusive practices, and celebrate their progress no matter how big or small. Creating spaces for ongoing learning, vulnerability, and collaboration helps keep the momentum going for them. Ultimately, I lead with empathy and patience, knowing growth is a journey we take together. Thank you for listening to me, and it has been a pleasure. This project has been eye opening for me, and it has been particularly fun to work on. And I hope you enjoy the slides. Thank you.